right, here he is, the legendary Brian Tatler from Diamond Head, and now, of course, Saxon. Brian, hello.
Hello, Logan. How are you?
Good, man. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on your show.
So the brand new Saxon album, which I see you got up there behind you, Hellfire and Damnation, out now, really is a fantastic record. Did you do any writing on the album? I know you play on it, but did you contribute to the writing at all?
Yes, I did. First, I was asked if I'd got any ideas, probably May, June, that sort of time. I think Biff was apparently this album was intended to be released in September of this year, but when the Priest tour came up in March, he said, "Right, I want to get the album out then in January of 2024." So we all thought, "Oh, okay then, let's see what we've got." He asked me if I've got ideas, and I was like, "Of course I have. I'm always working on ideas, and of course having a lot of time available in lockdown, as everybody else did. I was able to write a lot at home, and so I just sent all that as files over to Biff, and he picked three that he liked, and so I thought, oh, that's great. So then it was just a case of like going up to his house in York, and we worked on the songs, and then I would re-demo them, and then we'd work on them. Excuse me, as a band when we all got together in Germany. So yeah, I was surprised. Initially, I was sort of intended to be the touring guitarist, but he asked me if I'd got ideas, and he said, we're doing a new album. So I think he just needed more material and wanted more material to make this album as strong as possible.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up, obviously you just came in to be a touring guitarist in place of Paul Quinn, who retired. But I had, I remember seeing you when this whole thing first started happening. There was an article where you had said that you would like to be a full-blown member. And last week I had Nigel Glockler on the show, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, is Brian a full-time member now?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know that it's ever been said formally, but I mean, at this point, yeah, he's a member of Saxon now."
I think so. I mean, I'm on the album. I played all the rhythm guitars and lead guitars with Doug. We split everything up like that. There's a picture of me on the album. I'm doing all the gigs.
Sure.
So I think that seems to be the word. Yeah, I don't think Paul's coming back. I mean, people don't necessarily leave a band and then come back again, do they? I think he's done his bit, hasn't he, by a long, stretch. I think he's been with Biff since maybe mid-70s. So, and he's written 23 albums with Saxon. So, respect where it's due. He's done his bit, hasn't he? And if he wants to ease off the pedal a little bit now, who am I to say no?
was there when you get an offer like that, especially this late in your career, do you have to take a second to think it over? Is this really something I want to? Do I have the time? Do I have the energy to jump into this, or is it immediate like, yeah, let's do this?
Yeah, I was keen. I thought it was a fantastic challenge. I like to play. I don't mind playing. If playing in the covers band or a tribute band or anything, I just like to keep playing. And so when the offer came in, I'd already decided, yes, I'd do it. If ever they asked, I thought. I mean, they already asked if I'd stand in for Paul when he got COVID in 2022. So I started learning the set, and then when they called it late in March 2023 to say Paul's stepping down, I'd already decided if ever they ask me to step in again, or even if Paul quit, I'd absolutely say yes. I didn't have to think about it for a second. I mean, it was slightly weird, and I had to talk about it to my wife, and we both thought it was a massive move forward. She said, "I'll probably never see you then, because you'll be off touring with Saxon." because I mean, you know, I was told there's a South American tour coming up, there's festivals, we're coming over to the States, we're doing the new album, so it's obviously going to be busy, a busy time, busier than Diamond Head. So I knew it was going to be great though, because I've spent a lot of time in and around Saxon on tour and at festivals and things. So I know how it operates, and I knew it would be a big step up, and I was only too excited to take the challenge, really.
You brought up the Judas Priest tour, which is happening over in Europe, along with Uriah Heep, and then of course Saxon and Uriah Heep coming over here to the States later this spring. And I would imagine it's got to be particularly exciting for you specifically, because, you know, since you've joined Saxon, you've never really been shy about acknowledging that Saxon is a bigger band than Diamond Head. So I would imagine this is probably like the biggest U.S. tour that you've been a part of as well, the one coming up.
It is indeed. It's 7 weeks, and the longest tour I've ever done in the past was 5 weeks, and I've never done a tour like in the States where we do it in a tour bus. So this is going to be in a tour bus, and normally we're in a van, you know, with the gear in the back, and we'll stop at motels and things like that. But yeah, it's definitely of a much bigger level with more crew and lighting and PA and everything. The production is so much bigger than Diamond Head. I mean, Saxon have sold more records, haven't they? They've been plugging away for such a long time. They've built up a huge following. So it's great for me to come into to all this and enjoy my my time.
Well, what's interesting is last night I was reading, I guess I didn't realize that Diamond Head only came over here to the States for the first time, like, what, 22, 23 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, it's true. 2002 was our first time in the US. We played New Jersey. We played Metal Meltdown 4 in New Jersey with Saxon, funnily enough. So we bumped into each other then. I think they were on before we were. I think it was because it was our first time. They made a big deal of it, you know, first time in America and all that. So they put us on after Saxon. But yeah, it was terrible the way Diamond had never came over in the 80s or 90s. You know, it was so frustrating to see other bands come over like Iron Maiden and Leopard and, you know, Girls' School. And we never got a chance. So there it is. But I'm here now.
Was there any, back in the 80s, was there any offers to bring Diamond Head over here, or was there just never enough interest back then?
I heard, might have been ITB, I heard that they'd set up a tour for Diamond Head, but management and I don't know exactly what went down, but for some reason we didn't do it. Perhaps they just couldn't get it together, you know, with the work visas and, you know, the challenge of doing a tour like that. Might have been just too much for our management to get to grips with. I don't know, though. I can't remember.
It's very, very expensive to come over here. That is for sure. And the visas,
Sure.
I don't know about back then, but I know now that the obtaining visas can be a real pain in the ass.
Yeah, expensive. It's all very expensive. It's more expensive now than ever, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So going back, I want to go back to the beginning for a little bit with Diamond Head, because, you know, obviously being an integral part of the new wave of British heavy metal, highly influential band, but like we've talked about, you know, the mass appeal was never quite there for one reason for another. But what I find to be so fascinating is that when it came time to release the first record, you know, the White Album, of course, Lightning to the Nations, you had interest, if I have this story right, you had interest to release it from a major label, but they gave you an ultimatum that you had to fire your management that you had at the time, otherwise they wouldn't put it out. And so you decided to keep the management that you had at the time, and I think obviously the record did end up coming out, but I think it was through a different label, right? Because you didn't let go of your management.
No, I mean, bits of that might be roughly true, but the bulk of that isn't true. I mean, for a start, it wasn't my decision, but what we did was put out the label ourselves. I think we'd been offered like do two singles, and if they do well, we'll do an album with companies like Arista Records, I think, possibly Chrysalis, I can't remember. So it seemed to me like our management didn't really know what they were doing, and they were waiting for the big record deal, like 5 album deal and a huge advance and all that, because they totally believed in the band and thought we're going to be the next Led Zeppelin or something. And so they were waiting for the right offer, which didn't come. And so eventually, an A&R signed us to MCA Records after we'd released Lightning to the Nations ourselves on our own, not on our own label, but they just printed it up. There's a little label at the studio called Happy Face Records, and I would imagine our manager just paid for 1,000 copies to be printed up, and then we sold them mail order and sold them at gigs and probably made the money back, you know. But yeah, what happened once we were signed? We did 2 albums for MCA, and then they wanted to change management. They said either you change management or we will drop you from the label. And Sean, because it was Sean's mom who was now managing the band, didn't want that to happen. Now the band had already split into 2 camps, where it was just me and Sean, and we had to bring in other drummer and bass player and stuff. So everything was kind of down to me and Sean, but Sean was sort of unmovable on that decision, and I didn't think it was the right thing to do, but I couldn't really persuade him to sack his mom type thing, you know, blood's thicker than water. And he was fairly confident that we'd be able to get another deal with somebody else, you know, RCA, or they'll snap us up because we're brilliant, you know. And it didn't happen, because once you do get dropped by a label, other labels think, why have they been dropped?
Sure.
Is there a problem here, you know? What? And they must have, you know, people talk to each other in London, you know, music industry, they've all known what's going on. They probably heard we'd spent a load of money making the second album, Canterbury, for MCA, and it didn't recoup. We got amateur management, so they probably thought, right, we're not going to touch him then, you know, let him sink.
You know, I was looking on eBay last night. That first record, Lightning to the Nations, you know, an original pressing of it. I mean, that thing's like $350, $400.
Really, that much?
That's what I saw.
It for £100. Wow, it's going up and up and up. It is rare, though. I mean, yeah, there were only 1,000 copies with a plain white label, and then 1,000 copies with the printed white label. Not, you know, so it is a very rare item. 2,000 in the world of that, and then afterwards it did come onto CD. Metal Blade did it, and Wolf Records and Sanctuary, and so everybody can buy it now, of course, but the original vinyl is very collectible.
And you have I'm sure you have at least one copy of that.
Yeah, I've got a couple of copies.
So, you know, obviously with Diamond Head, there's connections with a couple of massive bands. Obviously Metallica, which, you know, everybody is pretty familiar with that. But what's almost more interesting to me is that Diamond Head actually supported AC/DC in January of 1980 on what would end up becoming the final shows ever with Bon Scott, and obviously, I guess, just weeks before he tragically passed away. Mm-hmm. Which is, I mean, what an incredible story and memory to have. How was it at that time? How were the shows?
Well, both the shows were incredible. They were both sold out. We were all huge fans of AC/DC. The way we think it happened was Def Leppard did the tour, which probably ran up to November, Highway to Hell. Then they went into the studio. So the 2 gigs that we got had been not left over. One, I think there'd been a fire, and I forget what the other one was. So we got to do Newcastle Mayfair and Southampton Gormont. And of course, we jumped at it. And I think the management, who happened to be Peter Mensch, and you know, was part of Lieber Krebs, I think the management was having a look at us because they must have heard from people like Jeff Barton and Malcolm Dove and Paul Suter. The Diamond Head were a hot band. You know, you should check them out, you know, possibly manage them. And they probably said the management they've got is not very good. So anyway, they gave us these 2 gigs and we watched as they, we had a big long sound check. Their drum tech come and help tune up the drum kit for us. The Peter Mensch came into our dressing room, you know, and I thought that's unusual. The manager of the main band is coming into the dressing room with the support band, a little band from Stourbridge who nobody's ever heard of, who are all 20 years old, you know. But he was obviously coming to check us out. So it seems like that to me and to Duncan Scott, who we've discussed this. We think he was coming to have a look at us to see if we were worth signing. But he either decided, no, I'm not going to, or he decided I can't prize the singer's mother away from the singer. So he didn't make an overture. And yeah, the 2 gigs were just incredible. We watched them both nights. And of course, we had no idea they were going to be Bond's last gigs. No one did. Sure. But yeah, they were absolutely brilliant. And then, yeah, about a week on the 10th of Feb, I think, a week or so later, we heard he died. And we were all completely shocked. Very strange to, you know, to meet somebody and, you know, get their autograph. And all that, and then suddenly they're no more. You know, very strange and quite upsetting.
Was Bon a cool guy to hang out with?
Oh yeah. In fact, we came off stage, and he'd been drinking a bottle of whiskey. He was watching us from the side of the stage. We was all thinking, "Oh, Bon Scott's there, look, watching us." You know, we must be good. We've got to play well, and. He'd been drinking a bottle of Jack, I think, and he gave the rest of the bottle to our bass player, Colin, as we passed him. Here you go, guys, you know, that kind of thing. And Colin kept that bottle, took it home with him and thought, I'll you know, that'll be worth some money one day.
Yeah, especially after what happened just a couple of weeks after that. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. Wow. Well, when Peter Mensch decides to not pick up Diamond Head for management, I mean, at the time, does it feel like a bit of a crushing blow, or was it not that big of a deal?
No, I worked all that out in hindsight. Really, he didn't say I want to manage you guys. You know, I think he just came into the dressing room and he chatted for about 15, 20 minutes, and he was sort of giving us a bit of a lecture about the music industry and what you need to do, But I think he was at the same time sounding us out, because otherwise, why was he there? You know, it's never happened again. I've never had the manager, Black Sabbath's manager, didn't walk into the dressing room, you know, when we supported them, or Megadeth's manager. So I think it was, I think he was checking us out, but there was no offer made, and so there's nothing to feel disappointed about.
Well, the other connection, of course, like I mentioned, is Metallica, which I feel I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention it. But your history with them goes back even before the band was really a thing, because you met Lars, I believe, in the summer of 1981, because he was just a fan of Diamond Head, and so you guys ended up meeting.
That's right. He bought the album when we put it in mail order in Sounds. He bought a copy over in LA. And then he wrote back to the address that was like our fan club and said, you know, I'm coming over to see, because we must have advertised the gigs, and we've got a tour booked for the summer of 81 in the UK. And he said, I'm coming over. And we thought it was great because we had a fan in America, and it was Lars. He was the only guy, I think, who bought a copy of the album in America, because we knew, because our management told us, you know, Sean's mom and Reg, they would have said, oh, there's a guy bought the album in the States. That's great, isn't it? And he's coming over to see the band. He's going to fly. And we thought, bloody hell, he's keen, isn't he? And so we met Lars backstage at this gig, and he's 17 years old, and we were very impressed that, well, how have you managed to do that? Your parents have let you come over to the state to the UK on your own. It must have cost a bit of money because we'd never been to the States, and it was quite a thing. And we took to him. We thought, we looked after him a bit. I let him stop at mine. It was my parents. I'm still living with my parents at this point, and the same with Sean. He went back to Sean's mum's and slept on the couch, and he stayed with us for about a month or so, and he came to some gigs with us. He'd sit in the car. There'd be initially there'd be 5 of us in the car with John driving, and then Sean, myself, Colin, and Duncan on the back seat. And now there's 6 of us, because now there've been myself, Colin, Duncan, and Lars on the back seat, all going to these gigs. We did a gig in Leeds, I remember, and one in Hereford. And but we took to him like Tim. He got this ridiculously unusual accent. It was a mixture of Danish and American, and we thought he was a nice guy and super enthusiastic. So we stayed in touch, and we became pen pals, and he was always wanted to see how we were doing, and when you're going to become the next big thing and stuff like that. So yeah, we stayed in touch, and I've been to see Metallica many, many times over the years, and he's returned the favor. I've stopped at his house, and it's great. It's a lovely little tale, isn't it?
That really is an incredible story. And so 3 years after you meet him in 1984, they put out the Creeping Death single and include Am I Evil as the B-side on that. Now, obviously, that was, for Ride the Lightning, which is only their second record, so they certainly didn't have the profile that they would eventually go on to have at that time. But did that work to Diamond Head's benefit at all back in those days?
Not so much, because, like you said, they're a lot smaller, and they're on Music for Nations over here. So it was only a small label, small deal. It was still really nice, though. They were the first band ever to cover Diamond Head, and on record. So to get that EP, the 12-inch single, was fantastic, and I thought they'd done a very respectful job, copying the music and trying to get the solo right and everything. And then I went to see them at Birmingham Odeon in '86 when on the Master of Puppets tour, and they invited me up on stage to play Am I Evil with the band. Yeah. And so again, got to meet Cliff Burton at that time. Wow. So I'd met Lars, but Lars introduced me to James, Kirk, and Cliff. So, and we all know what happened next. But that was a fantastic night for me to get up on stage with Metallica, even though, like you say, they weren't household names they are now. But it was still, Lars's band, and it was cool.
Well, I would imagine when the Big Four thing happened out 15 or 10, 12 years ago, however long ago it was, when they brought all, Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax, and they did Am I Evil on stage together. I mean, were you there when they did that? Have you ever seen them do that live or no? You
mean at the Bulgaria gig, the Sofia gig?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't there, but no, I didn't know about it. No, I did think, though, of all the metal tracks in the world you could have done, they managed to pick Am I Evil, which I was very flattered by. It was fantastic, really, considering that album hadn't even had a proper release, and labels had turned it down, and it had one review in Sounds, and that was it. No other magazine. Well, there weren't any other music magazines around at the time, really. But considering the humble beginnings of that album, where it cost, we did it in a week, and it cost not very much money to make and stuff. To have gone on to have a life like that, and to end up being the song the Big Four choose to play at that giant gig was ever so weird to me, But I was, of course, grateful. It is a great riff, though. It's a great riff. I'll give it that.
Of course. Aside from financial gains, I'm sure the royalties from Metallica have been fair. But I'm sure they've played a big role in just the overall even longevity and success of Diamond Head.
Yeah,
I mean, definitely brought a whole new audience to the band.
Yes, I think so. I think if Metallica had never covered any Diamond Head songs, I don't know if we'd still be going. I think it's been a massive help, and it probably opens a lot of doors. And when you're talking to, say, promoters, and they say, well, Metallica have covered four of their songs, etc. I'm sure it does, bring in a potential much bigger audience, and has helped keep the band alive. Definitely, yeah.
Well, it's interesting how Saxon sort of ties into all this, because if I recall, Metallica's first ever show was opening for Saxon, and which now
Yeah.
you're a part of, and like a majority of their set was Diamond Head songs.
That's so weird, isn't it?
It is.
How
It's
it's all gone
crazy.
full circle. Yeah, they probably played 3 or 4 Diamond Head songs,
Wow.
and then I've ended up joining Saxon. It is strange, but just maybe synchronicity and things like that. But yeah, definitely strange. Yeah.
Well, a couple more things before we wrap up. I know we're running out of time, but when Nigel was on last week, I asked him, I said, given how long Saxon's been around, given everybody in the band's ages and all that, could this potentially be the final Saxon record or last tour, whatever? And he said, absolutely not. There's still plenty of gas in the tank. How about for you both with Diamond Head and now being in Saxon? I mean, are you planning on going for as long as you can, or do you think there'll ever be a Brian Tatler retirement, be it from Saxon, Diamond Head, or whatever?
I've always said the only thing that will stop me is probably illness. If I can't do it anymore, if I couldn't play, or lost my marbles or something, then you'd have to stop. But there's no reason to stop other than that. Really, I want to keep going, especially now I've joined Saxon, and there's a lot spinning out into the year and stuff like that. But I'd like to keep Diamond Head going, but I definitely want to do more and more. Biff is the man in charge of Saxon, isn't he? So if he wants to do more, everybody will go with the flow. I'm sure Biff would like to do another album, in a year or two, and I will try and provide music for that.
Yeah, when you mentioned when we first started that he chose 3 songs that you had sent him for the new record. Were those everything you had written? Was it written specifically for Saxon, or was it just kind of stuff that you had laying around, maybe even for Diamond Head?
There was 2 that I've had a while that I demoed several times at home or in rehearsal, and then there was one that I'd done recently. But it wasn't kind of designed for Saxon. It was just something that I thought would work for Saxon. But I probably sent him 15 or more songs. But it was great that he was able to pick from that. It's nice to have too much choice, isn't it? So of course, Nibs sends him material, and Doug and Nigel. So he's got a lot to choose from, just music. And then he can say, right, I think that will work for Saxon, and he chose 3 of mine, as I say. So I was impressed.
Well, obviously, plenty of dates that you can see Brian with Saxon, whether it's in Europe with Judas Priest and Uriah Heep, over here with Uriah Heep, and I think there's only like Midwest and East Coast dates. I believe there's going to be some West Coast dates announced at some point in the near future. Anything else going on that we need to mention before we wrap up?
I think that's about it. But there are festivals after the US tour. We're doing Hellfest with Metallica, and Tons of Rock in Norway with Metallica. And there's other festivals, Dynamo, and there's a few, but more coming regularly. There's a couple have been announced recently. So the diary's filling up nicely, and it's an exciting time.
Well, like I said, plenty of opportunities to check it out live. Brian, thank you so much for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It's been good.